Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 2. There's another really important point that was made in this video by Arthur Prudent that I wanted to point out, and that's this part over here where he's showing another video where someone is talking about the importance of the number 7 in the Bible and how the genealogy of Jesus Christ comes up in the book of Matthew in verses 1 through 17. And as you can see, the genealogy is broken down into 3 sets of 14 generations, from Abraham to David, from David to Babylon, and from the Babylonian captivity to Jesus Christ. So you have 3 sets of 14 generations, and then it culminates in verse 17 with the birth of Jesus Christ. Okay, and you can see that over here in the book of Matthew, starting from verse 1. And then when you get to verse 17, well, actually, when you go to verse 16, it says, "And Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is Christ." So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David until the carrying away of Babylon are 14 generations, and from the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations. So it culminates over here in verse 17. It gives a summary. It's pointing out the birth of Jesus Christ here in verse 16. And then again in verse 18, it says, "Now the birth of Jesus Christ was on the wise, when as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Ghost." So again, it's from verses 16 through 18 where it talks about the birth of Jesus Christ, and the genealogy culminates over here in verse 17. Okay, so this is really remarkable when you combine it with the fact that Jesus is the 77th from Adam, as was pointed out in this video, and the 14th from Adam on Joseph's side. He was the 77th from Mary's side. Mary was the 76th. And then Jesus was the 77th. And then from Joseph's side, he was the 14th. So again, God seems to be confirming the numbers 77 and 14, as well as the number 17 when it comes to the genealogy of Jesus Christ. So again, God is showing the importance of these numbers in the Bible. Okay, another thing that was pointed out in this video is how Jesus had 24 chromosomes, and this is according to the testimony by Ron Wyatt, who discovered the Ark of the Covenant, or he claims to have discovered the Ark of the Covenant, and I believe that his testimony is true. But when he had the blood examined, they found out that the blood had 24 chromosomes. It had 23 from the mother and just 1 Y chromosome that came from the Father, which came from God. And so Jesus had 24 chromosomes. Okay, so another thing that I noticed as I was watching this video is in this part over here where he was talking about DNA, I just happened to notice where it talks about a tree of life, I noticed the Strong's number H2416. Okay, so I looked it up because I wanted to try to understand why it was coming up in verse 16. As you can see, it means living, alive. If you go to the previous Strong's number, it means something else. So I'll just show it to you. It means branch or twig. But if you go to 2416, that's when this word begins, which means living or alive. And it sort of looked familiar to me, and so I looked at this other word to see where it comes from, which is 2421. And so I noticed that that means to live, and again, that looked familiar, so I went to the next Strong's number that it comes from, which is 2331, and then that's when I realized that it was the word Hava, which is the word Eve. So this is Strong's 2331. This means to breathe, to declare, to show, or make known. But when you look at the very next Strong's number, it's actually the word Eve. So it sounds the same. It's the word Hava, but this is the word Eve, which means life or living. And I've talked before about how the Strong's number for Eve is 2332, which is 23 frontwards and backwards. So this is a representation of DNA, because you have 23 this way and then 23 in the opposite direction. So I believe this represents the restored DNA. And what's interesting is I had just recently noticed that the Strong's number for Eve in the Greek is 2096. So again, that's another representation of DNA, because you have the 2 chromosomes, and then you have the 96, which is exactly what Arthur Prudent had showed right at the beginning of this video. He showed a 6-9 and a 9-6, which I believe represents the current condition of the DNA, because it's right side up and upside down. And so that's just another way to represent the same thing that is being represented here with the 23 and the 32. So I believe this represents DNA. And then when you look at it in the Greek, you have the 2, which I believe represents the 2 chromosomes, and then you have the 9 and the 6, which I believe represents the right side up, upside down. And as you can see, that comes up 2 times in the New Testament. And then the Hebrew word for Eve is 2332. Okay, so getting back to the Strong's word 2416, which is the word which means living or alive. And I got interested in this word because I noticed the number 16, which would seem to indicate the year 16. So I was just curious about it. And then that's when I noticed that it's a form of the word Eve when you look at the etymology. But I was just curious to see what would be Strong's 2424, because in the Greek, I'll pull that one up first. In the Greek, Strong's 2424 is the word Jesus, which is Jesus. And so you see it means Jehovah is salvation. And so that's Strong's number 2424. And of course, Jesus had 24 chromosomes. And so when you look at the Hebrew for the Strong's number 2424, you see that it's the word living. And you see that this is a form of the word Hava, because it comes from the same word that the word Hava comes from, which is 2421, which is this word right here. And so when you follow the etymology of that word, you see that it takes you to 2331, which is Hava, and it means to breathe or to declare, make known. And then the very next Strong's word, which is 2332, sounds exactly the same as 2331. It's the word Hava, and it means Eve or living. And so basically what I understood is that the tree of life represents the restored temple, the restoration of the bride, because it's the word living, which is the word Hava, and the tree of life. The word life in the tree of life is Strong's 2416, which is a form of the same word. And you can see that over here, it's 2416, and so they both come from this word, which is 2421, which is the word that you get the word Hava from. And so again, I believe that's what this imagery over here represents. I believe it represents the restored DNA. And so another thing that I wanted to point out that I had pointed out in the comment in Arthur Prudent's video is if you go to the next Strong's number, the Strong's number for Adam in the Greek, as I had mentioned in my last video, was Strong's 76, and it means earth, and the word earth in the Hebrew is Strong's number 776. So Adam, which means the red earth, is 76 in the Greek. And of course Adam represents Christ. Christ is the last Adam. But when you go to the next Strong's number, which is 77, it's this word over here, which means without expense or costing nothing. So it basically means free. And of course what Jesus did on the cross was a free gift. The Bible tells us that it was free, it was by grace. And over here in Romans 15, it's interesting that it comes up in verses 15 through 18, but it says, "But not as the offense, so also is the free gift. For if through the offense of one many be dead, much more the grace of God and the gift by grace, which is by one man, Jesus Christ, hath abounded unto many. And not as it was by one that sinned, so is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation, but the free gift is of many offenses unto justification. Therefore, as by the offense of one's judgment came upon all men to condemnation, even so by the righteousness of one free gift came upon all men unto justification of life." It's also interesting that the word life came up in verse 18, so I just wanted to look at the Strong's number, and as you can see, that's 2222. Just like the books in the Bible, there's 3 sets of 22 books in the Bible, there's 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and there's 22 chapters in the book of Revelation. I believe that all represents DNA, the 22 autosomes that we would share with Christ when the DNA is restored. It also represents the wedding, because this is when Eve, or the woman, was brought to the man in Genesis 2:22, and then Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh," which is what it says about Christ and the church in the book of Ephesians. And then I believe verse 24 represents the cleaving together, and then it's Strong's 2424 in the Hebrew, which means life. So Strong's 2222 in the Greek means life, and Strong's 2424 in the Hebrew means living, and this is a form of the word Hava, or Eve, as you can see here, because they both come from Strong's 2421. And then when you look at the next Strong's 2331, you get the word Hava, and then the next Strong's, which is 2332, is the actual name Hava, or Eve, in the Bible. So I believe this all represents DNA. And so I had a few more things that I wanted to share. I wanted to talk a little bit about the number 8, the number 18, and Chronos, which is something else that Arthur Prudent showed in this video. Showed a video by Enter the Stars where he was talking about Chronos. And I actually did a table on the word Chronos this morning, and I wanted to share that table. As you can see, it's coming up in the book of Joshua 22, verses 1 through 8. But I'll have to do that in another video. Thanks for watching, and God bless you all.